How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the place where you can ask all of your questions about politics without any kind of fear of judgment or roasting or ridicule. So, just ask whatever you like. This is the place where you can ask all of your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated they might be. And you don't have to worry about getting judged. You don't have to worry about me calling you out for having political beliefs that are different than mine. Sometimes when you ask a question, you can tell like what the political affiliation of the question asker is. And sometimes people will, they don't want to ask certain questions because they think it'll make them look like, a MAGA person or a libtard person, and you don't have to worry about rephrasing your question here at all. I don't care what your politics are. I'm just here to answer your questions. Jacob says, thoughts on Lord of the Rings? I love Lord of the Rings. That's not really a question about politics, though. Thank you for being here, though, Jacob. So, yeah, if you got any questions about politics, everybody, just let me know in the chat. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language because there's all these different three-letter agencies that we just use abbreviations for, and sometimes we just talk about people by their last name, and we throw around terms like reconciliation or filibuster or continuing resolution as though people automatically know what those things are. Maybe you don't know what the filibuster is. Maybe you don't know what the EPA does versus the FEC versus the FDA. This is a place where you can ask all of your questions about politics, no matter how complicated or simple they are. Heat Storage says, what do Democrats think about the Democratic Party? I mean, that is a difficult question to ask because the Democratic Party is a really big tent. So it's got people that are, mild mannered centrists. It's got never Trump Republicans. It's got progressives. It's got tankies. It's liberals and leftists. And so, yeah, I think generally speaking, most people are disillusioned with the Democratic Party, and some of that is warranted, and some of that is the fault of, a decades long smear campaign orchestrated by the billionaire class. But yeah, I think that most people want the Democratic Party to be, more streamlined, progressive, aggressively going after their agenda, stuff like that. What's up, Tyro? Good to see you again. Echoless Chamber says, thoughts on presidential election being less distraction from the real elite controlling the world. So I know what you're getting at, Echoless Chamber, and I think you're missing the mark just a little bit because our lives and the political structures and the rules that govern us, they do change depending on who was in charge. Like there is a big difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. There's a big difference between the politicians. There's a big difference between the platforms. There's a big difference between outcomes on both the federal and state level, depending on if Republicans are in charge or Democrats are in charge. But there is a distraction game that is being put forward by the billionaire class, and that is number one, flooding the airwaves with a bunch of misleading information and propaganda that convinces people that the Republican Party is better than it is, the Democratic Party is worse than it is, voting doesn't do anything, stuff like that. And also in getting people to fight amongst themselves, in telling people that your enemy is not in the billionaire class or Republican politicians, it's in other voters. And you should make fun of MAGA voters. And MAGA, you should make fun of Democratic voters. And, you should fight amongst yourselves. Progressives should fight amongst centrists and vice versa. And Republicans, you got to go out there and you got to fight trans kids and immigrants and poor people, etc. That is a narrative that was created astroturf style by the billionaire class to get people focused on the wrong enemy, because the enemy is the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them to achieve their agenda. Party Source 12 says, what does the recent Supreme Court ruling mean for the future of birthright citizenship? So the Supreme Court ruling that was just handed down does not end birthright citizenship. It just makes it harder for us to fight for our constitutional right for birthright citizenship. I saw a lawyer on TikTok the other day be like, this decision is great for lawyers because everybody's going to have to fucking hire us just to protect their constitutional rights. Yeah, it severely limits nationwide injunctions by lower courts, which means that if the president does something unconstitutional or that tramples on the rights of his citizens, that there's not one judge that is going to be able to stop that. It's going to have to be judges and attorney generals and class action lawsuits in like all 50 states. It's a fucking nightmare. Joe Kick Better says, is LeBron going to force another stupid trade? I don't know. Macromind says, thousands of jobs are kind of being lost. Macromind says, so if we dissolve the stock holdings of the billionaire class, will that destroy the hundreds of thousands of jobs? No, it will not, Macromind. And also, I don't know if dissolving the stock holdings of the billionaire class is the move. Like, I don't know what mechanisms we use in order to rebalance the scales and do something about income inequality. But a lot of the rhetoric around don't tax us, don't regulate our businesses, don't raise the minimum wage, anything that would cut into billionaires being, as untouchably wealthy as they currently are. A lot of that rhetoric is bullshit. It is just the billionaire class trying to convince you to scare you away from taxing them or balancing things out and making society more equitable, where the working class is the one that's creating all the value and the billionaire class is the one that's getting all the rewards. And we think that that is unfair. Budget Chicken says, chances of big beautiful bill passing in the Senate. It looks like the Senate version is probably going to pass, but it will still have hurdles in the House, because now that it passes the Senate, then it has to go back to the House to sort of like, make sure that they're cool with all the changes that the Senate made. Now, I don't do predictions on this show. I just say this. If you live in a place where you have a Republican, either House member or senator, who you do not want to vote for this, then you should do the work of stopping them. That you should call their offices 24/7. You should fax them. You should go to their offices. You should bug them. Obviously, I don't condone any kind of violence or destruction of property, but it is up to you to put political pressure on the people representing you to fight this bill. All right, Amber says the bill is incredibly unpopular on both sides of the aisle. It adds trillions to the debts. Yes, all of that is accurate. Yes, Amber, I'm agreeing with all of that. There's no question in there, though, so nothing for you to respond to. But thank you for being here, Amber. I appreciate you. Take That Talk says, did you hear Mamdani is not having Miami is not having November elections? Yes, I did see that. I don't know enough about that, but I just say that it looks pretty sketch. Anders Watson says, did you see Tucker on NYC? I haven't seen him do anything recently. I try not to watch him. He's annoying. Not So Slim Shady says, what do you think of Zoran? I like him. I like him a lot. And I want to warn everybody who lives in New York that the billionaire class is going to do everything they can to smear him and to torpedo his agenda. And they're going to try to get him to lose the general election in November. So you're not done. If you like Mamdani, then you need to continue working for Mamdani. Kenny Reeves says, when did people start worrying about the debts? First, when Republicans told them that it was the biggest fucking deal on the planet, despite the fact that they are the ones that are always increasing the debt. But it actually is kind of becoming a problem because the debt is so large and interest rates are so high that we are actually contributing to a significant amount of the deficit just by not paying off our national debt. Paxton Powell says he's an Islamic socialist. I don't know what you mean by that, Paxton Powell. Like, are you trying to say that he's like a bad guy because of that? But because I don't know how accurate that is, and also neither of those words is like a bad thing. Like somebody, being a Muslim or somebody, being Islamic or somebody being a socialist, like those aren't necessarily bad things. Kate says, is Netanyahu actually being held accountable? Not really. Like, as he's prime minister, he is kind of shielded from prosecution. Once he's no longer prime minister, then he will have to suffer legal consequences for his corruption charges that I believe he has been found guilty of already, or it looks like he's going to be found guilty. But yeah, the cases are still ongoing, I believe. And if you're thinking about like the ICC, like the war crimes thing, unless he goes to a country that enforces ICC law, then yeah, he's not going to go to jail or anything for that. Lever 2K says, thoughts on Trump's call for the Fed Chair Powell to cut interest rates. He thinks that cutting interest rates will look better for him, that it will charge the economy. He's not worried about inflation because inflation will hurt poor people and he doesn't give a shit about poor people. And he just wants the Fed to do what he wants it to do. He wants total control over the government. And so he does not like that Powell is an independent individual. Not so Slim Shady says, do you think Cuomo would rather Zoran or the Republican candidate win? Probably the Republican candidate. He's a real vindictive piece of shit. So I think he would rather everybody in New York suffer than the guy that beat him in the primary win the election. Savannah, good to see you. I want total control over the government. I think you'd be better, actually. Take That Talk said, could the red states pull midterm elections like Miami? You know, I don't know the legal processes by which I think the governor or it was the mayor of Miami that canceled the elections. I don't know what those legal processes look like. But I will say this. The Republican Party is hostile to the idea of a representational democracy. They want to entrench themselves in power. And so anywhere that they have the ability to cancel elections, they will try. They will try on the federal level. They will try on the state level. They are sinister. They're being insidious about this. They're being blatant about this. So yeah, can they legally? Probably not. Will they try? Will they succeed? That is an open. Well, sorry. Can they legally? I don't know. Will they try? 100%. And will they get away with it? That's an open question. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Dark Spider says, are you a parking ticket because you've got fired? What a nice thing to say, Dark Spider. I appreciate you being here. Budget Chicken over on YouTube says, will Jared consider making a modern day I'm Just a Bill song? That is not on my to-do list, Budget Chicken, but let's see here. If I get let's see here. If I can get 100 Patreon subscribers, then I will write a modern day Just a Bill song. Gidgy says, why is Trump God? Trump is not God. Let's see here. Georgia Lake Life says, Democrats are worse. No, they're not. I don't know what you're talking about. Not so Slim Shady says, Cuomo seems like the pettiest man on the planet. I mean, he's one of many. I would also introduce you to what the fuck's that dude's name? God damn it, I can't remember. There's too many to name, but the old governor of New Jersey, he was pretty petty as well. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the live stream. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. If you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you disagree with me politically. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to debate. I am just here to answer your questions about politics. Cellotex 24.2 says, is Trump coin one of the most concerning things in all of history? I mean, I think that it is one of the most blatant examples of government corruption in the history of America. The dude is literally setting up a mechanism for unlimited dark money contributions from anybody in the world, including foreign nationals, including government officials from adversarial nations. And it's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's unethical. I forget if I said that one already, but yeah, it's jaw-droppingly corrupt. Let's see here. Dallas says, so Biden was more corrupt. Biden was not more corrupt. Dallas, ask a question or I will boot you. Zesty Cacti says, what's a positive in your opinion about Gavin Newsom? Gavin's done a lot of good things. Actually, I have a list here of things that I have liked that Gavin Newsom has done. He supported gig workers, which I liked a lot. Let's see here. I have a list. I gotta find my list though. He ended the death penalty in California. He put limits on police force. He enacted anti-poverty laws, and he was pro-gig workers. He did a lot of good stuff. He also did a lot of things that I don't like. So, Danny says, why do you think America caters to Israel? AIPAC is an extremely powerful organization that threatens government employees with primary challenges and with funding their opposition in general elections. Also, they will call you anti-Semitic, and that is a very damaging label for politicians, especially if they are in, areas that have high Jewish populations. And also, there are some Republican politicians who are currently in office who believe that they need to support Israel because Israel will bring about the rapture, and they really want to go to heaven immediately. And that is a really concerning thing. It should be really worrisome to everybody that there are people in control of the levers of power in this country right now who want the apocalypse to happen because they believe it will shoot them directly to heaven. They will fucking get catapulted into heaven, and they're working towards doing that. They are working towards Israel taking over all of the surrounding nations. So because they believe that the rapture is going to happen because of that, there are Christian extremists in our government, and we should all be extremely worried about that. Not so Slim Shady says, was the petty governor you said Chris Christie? Yes, he was. Thank you for reminding me of what his name was. Earl Richardson says, praise the Lord for President Trump. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. All right. Dab Daddy Ferg says, howdy, just had a quick question over Doge. All right, ask your question, Dab Daddy. I don't typically have people come up, but you can ask your question in the chat. You know, we don't have a lot of comments right now, so plenty of opportunity to get your thoughts out there. Stinky says, do you think Mamdani is just doing this for show to get into power? No, he seems pretty sincere to me, but that's the thing is I think is really important to keep in mind, where political rhetoric versus actually enacting platforms is concerned, is that we should at least be electing politicians who are saying the right thing. Like right now, Republican politicians are getting into office saying the wrong thing, saying that we are going to cut taxes for billionaires. We're going to cut regulations that make sure that your air is clean, that your food is safe to eat, and shit like that. And they're being rewarded for it. That we're electing Republican politicians. We are re-electing Republican politicians who fucking tried to do a coup, who don't believe in the 2020 election was free and fair, despite all evidence, despite every court case. These people are being re-elected. They are being gifted with more power and with stable employment, despite the fact that they are saying and doing the wrong thing. So before we start questioning people that are saying the right thing, like, are you really going to do that? Let's at least reward those people. And then we can sort of have an even playing field of everybody saying the right thing, but then the ones that aren't actually doing it, then we can get rid of those people and vote in people that will actually do the right thing. All right, scrolling down the bottom, Omni NYC says, how long till the USA turns into the next Hungary? That depends entirely on how much work people do to stop it from turning into Hungary. Because we, the people, have the power to stop this slide into authoritarianism. And if you are like me and you don't want that, then join me in doing the work and recruiting other people to do the work as well. And if you want to know more about what the work is, check out my Discord. I've got a thread posted about it. Stinky says, you're a smart one. Thank you. Thank you, Stinky. You're smart for recognizing that. Let's see here. Zesty Cacti said, is there any truth to Mamdani campaigning on raising taxes to white folks? No, that is not accurate. He said he's going to raise taxes on the rich. That is it. Bennis says, how much will college loans change under the big beautiful bill? I actually haven't seen anything about college loans in there, Bennis, so I apologize. That is something I do not know about. Ken's Selling Gems says the Republicans have the House. That is accurate. Ken says, based on the Russian tail showing on the 2024 election, do you think there was fraud in 2024? So I am interested in seeing how this, I think, Rockland County case in New York pans out, where it looks like there was changes made to voting machines to erase votes for Kamala Harris. I'm not jumping to conclusions. I am waiting to see how discovery works out, but I will say that I am the least amount skeptical that there was vote changing than I have ever been. But again, I'm waiting. Now, does that mean that everything was on the up and up if that case turns into nothing? Absolutely not. Republicans repeatedly closed polling locations in Democratic areas to make it harder for people to vote. Voter ID laws are intended to keep Democratic voters from voting. Closing down DMVs in states that have voter ID laws is designed to keep Democratic voters from being able to vote. Massive campaign finance violations by the billionaire class, by Elon Musk, and Donald Trump. That is against the law, and it was cheating. It was cheating that he was paying people $1 million to register to vote. It was illegal that he was sending out mailers with fake information on them saying that they were from the Harris campaign. So, yeah, was it completely on the up and up? Absolutely not, 100%. Republicans have been lying and cheating their way into winning elections for a very long time, and they did not stop. Were voting machines hacked? That is still an open question. We don't know. Was Russia helping to elect Republicans? Absolutely, 100%. There's no question about that. Heat Storage says, why don't America have ID laws? Every other nation have it. I don't know if it's true that every other nation has it, heat storage, but also we don't need them. There is almost no voter fraud. It's so small. I think like in 10 years, they found 11 individual cases of voter fraud in the state of Texas, where they have been investigating this pretty consistently. Um, we also know that the Republican Party has admitted that voter ID laws are only to try to help them win elections and have actually nothing to do with election security. We have them on tape admitting this. So, do they actually have like any good faith reasons for trying to instill voter ID laws? The answer is 100% no. Do we need them? No. And there's an easy compromise to it too, which is make IDs free and make them really easy to get, no matter what district or state that you live in. And until Republicans are willing to do that, then I will not listen to a single fucking one of their stupid ass bullshit election security arguments for voter ID laws. And I want to be very clear that I'm talking about the politicians and I'm talking about the talking heads. I am not going to throw any tea or shade at a Republican voter who has been lied to by the Republican elites in spreading that bullshit. They probably really believe that that is the thing that is happening. But, everybody gets tricked, everybody gets conned, whether you are left, right, and center. S. Cub Steve says, "Got it. You're a Democrat." I am a Democrat. Do you think that that means that I am unreliable as a source of information? Melissa 23510 says, "Is there any truth to these viral posts re immigrants being dropped out to sea on cargo planes?" I have not heard that. That sounds monstrous. I gotta be honest. While I wouldn't put it past them, it does seem like the sort of fake news story that is used to incite people into chaos. And so I would take that with a grain of salt. Because here's the thing, is that the things that we know that ICE has done already, the things that have been confirmed by multiple legitimate news sources, they're bad enough. They're bad enough that we don't need to add on to it them flying planes over the ocean and then dumping immigrants out into the ocean to die. Let's see here. Do you condemn the IDF? Yes, I do. They're guilty of war crimes. Let's see here. Melissa says, "I figured this all over now." AJ in LA says, "Bodies found with shackled hands and feet reportedly." I'm waiting for confirmation from like a legacy news source or the Associated Press or a foreign news source, because remember, everybody, that the internet is the Wild West. Okay, so you gotta take everything that you see on the internet with a massive grain of salt. Sociology doctor says, "Not fake news. Shackle bodies washed up on Spain shores may not be from the U.S. May not be from the U.S. says sociology doctor. Again, guys, we just have to wait and see. Do not jump to conclusions. Do your research. Don't spread misinformation. Just we don't need to know the answer to this question right now. We can look, we can wait, we can dig in, we can figure it out. Let's see here. ISIL was Barack Hussein Obama's pet project. He said it would take years to defeat. Trump did it in 30 days. Bo Dean, that is inaccurate. Everything you just said was inaccurate. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you, because I don't just have people on my live streams spreading misinformation. I'm not here to get into fights. I'm here to engage. Let's see here. Sociology doctor says Spain is doing DNA analysis. All right, great. Let us find it. Bodine, you said 100% accurate. You said truth. Those are not questions. So you are out of here. Congratulations, buddy. Alrighty. NO says Republicans seem super threatened by Zohran Mamdani. What are your thoughts on him? I like Zohran. I like Mamdani a lot. I think he's great. The billionaire class, the Republican Party, people in Cuomo's orbit, they are going to do everything that they can to smear him, stop him, keep him from winning the election, torpedoing his agenda. And so if you like him and you live in New York City, you are one of his constituents, then I would just encourage you to continue being part of the Mamdani movement. Don't just say that just because he won the primary, that now your work is done and you get to rest easy because Mamdani's gonna do all the work. He needs our help. Every progressive needs our help, because the people in power, the people with all the money and influence, they are using all of that to squash us and to squash good politicians, good progressive politicians. They are going to smear them on social media. They are going to use their power to torpedo their agenda. And then they're going to hire op-ed writers to say, look, these progressives can't get anything done, because they stopped them from getting that shit done. So do the work, guys. Do the work of helping your good progressive politicians to both get elected and enable their agenda. All right, scrolling down the bottom, it says Boromexfeld says not just the Republicans, Democrats are going after him as well. Yes, but not every Democrat. The Democratic Party is a bunch of different factions, and one of those factions is the centrist gerontocracy, and they do not like the young progressive movement, and they don't like it for I don't know what reason. It might be that they're worried that it's going to paint the entire Democratic Party as too extreme, and it's going to hurt their electoral chances going forward, and they're worried that Republicans getting more power would be damaging for their constituents. Or they're selfish, and they want the power, and they don't want anybody else to have the power. They want to be in control. Their wing wants to be in control, that sort of thing. I'm not prepared to make that accusation towards everybody that is objecting to Mamdani's election win, but I would say it's probably a cornucopia of reasons. But I also think that it is dumb. I think it is a dumb, stupid thing for Democrats to do. I think it's a dumb thing for Gillibrand and Pelosi and Schumer. Anybody who's fucking losing their minds about Mamdani's win and is not just celebrating it as an awesome, this is exactly what the Democratic Party needs kind of thing is dumb. It's dumb. It's self-defeating. I heard on a podcast recently somebody was like, Democrats are so obsessed with not losing that they'll never win again. And this just seems like more evidence of that. In addition to, like there being some shitty members of Democratic leadership who are like, no, me, I like it. I'm the one in power. I'm the one in charge. But of all the political parties that exist, the one that represents politicians like Mamdani is the Democratic Party. David Evans says, how do Dems think that a Muslim socialist is going to help them win nationally? That is a really weird thing to say, David Eben. You're acting like the Democratic Party got together and said, what would really help us nationally is electing a Muslim socialist to the mayor of New York City. So yeah, that wasn't like their game plan, but is it possible that it could help them nationally? Yeah, maybe. Every progressive politician, every diverse politician, every young politician that comes to the forefront of the political culture and is part of the Democratic Party is a win. AOC was a win for the Democratic Party. So yeah, maybe, I don't know. Like, I'm not really in the game of trying to suss out and predict what things are going to be, how the electorate is going to interpret certain things that happen, because America is eclectic and weird and diverse. But I just know what the billionaires are going to do. I know that the billionaires are going to take this and they're going to try to tell people that he is all these awful things, then the Democratic Party is all these awful things for supporting him, and that they're all a bunch of fucking Islamist extremists, socialists, and that if they don't want their daughters to get sexually assaulted by violent immigrants, then they have to vote for Republicans to save themselves. Ginji says AIPAC is against Zoran. Yeah, they are, and that is another thing that I think is a check in the correct box for Mamdani. Like, I like you more as a politician if AIPAC does not like you. Footfighter says, who's physically going to join Iran? I don't know. And says, Zoran's advocating for working class rights. His religion has nothing to do with him leading, David. That is also accurate. Let's see here. David Evans says, y'all haven't learned anything from the past election. What did you think, David? Also, ask a question or you're going to get booted. I think I know what you're doing here, David, and I don't care for it. So, DJ, more break, please. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. K2 says, how much longer will racial discrimination profiling against whites be ignored by the establishment? I don't know if discrimination profiling against white people in America is the kind of problem that needs to be examined thoroughly, where racism and misogyny is much more of an issue than prejudice against white people. And also, do you believe that it's getting ignored by the establishment when the Republican Party is currently in charge of every lever of government? They are making it seem as though discrimination against white people is the biggest problem in history. They are not ignoring it, and it is also not that big of a problem. Yes, Stan Blackwood, I am with you. Okay, let's get into some of these comments here. Democrats for Trump says, make Democrats great again. Democrats for Trump, US, US. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Eaton Beaver, love that name, says, do you have the Republican MAGA snowflake beard? I don't know what that means. Republican MAGA snowflake beard. Are you talking about like the beard that like Ted Cruz has because he's trying to appeal more masculine? Asher says, hey Jared, thoughts on limiting home ownership to 3 homes? That sounds pretty cool to me. I don't hate it. Larry McBarry says, why are you such an establishment shill? That's not what your mom said last night. I'm not an establishment shill. What the hell are you talking about? Alrighty. Ted Terrific says, every major empire eventually falls because they start believing their own press. I don't believe that that is accurate, Ted Terrific. Every major empire eventually falls, or we can just have a nice society that doesn't fall, where everybody gets taken care of and politicians actually take care of their constituents and shit like that. Jake says, what's your opinion on immigration? Immigrants are a net positive, so we should encourage it. Tyler Hickenbottom says, what do you think on Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens turning on Israel? I worry that as 2 of the most popular and visible mouthpieces for the MAGA coalition, they're trying to set themselves up for future runs for president as fake populists, the same way that Trump was a fake populist. EM9076 says, how do you propose that we take care of everyone? Text the rich. Wellesley says, do you agree with $30 minimum wage? Yes. Jake says, okay, do you believe it would be a bad thing to have an open border? Yeah, I mean, I think there's still value in making sure that the people that come into this country that are not citizens are vetted and have passports or proper visas, depending on where they're coming from. So yeah, I'm not advocating for open borders. I'm open to an argument for it, but I can see why it has value. Matt Wood just put a penis. Am I coming? Says Matt Wood. No, I have not. And if you do that again, I'm going to block you. Scott. Coach Bailey says, Tucker president, elaborate on that idea, please. So yeah, all right, Matt, congratulations, you're out of here. So yeah, Donald Trump is very old and he does not live a healthy lifestyle. So everybody is jockeying to pick up one of the most valuable pieces of political real estate in modern history, the MAGA base. It is what Ron DeSantis wants to do. It's what J.D. Vance wants to do. But nobody has the juice. Nobody has the charisma. Nobody's been able to do what Trump has been able to do. And so now there are a bunch of young politicians who are trying to establish themselves in certain ways to try to pick up that group once Trump kicks the bucket. Tucker Carlson is doing it. Candace Owens is doing it. Josh Hawley is doing it. A lot of people are doing it. But those are the 3 that I think are the most dangerous because they Josh Hawley is doing this whole thing right now where he's a fake populist calling out the billionaire class for how much money they make at the companies. And meanwhile, he is voting to cut all their taxes and he's voting for the big, beautiful bill. The dude is 100% fucking full of shit. And he wrote a fake ass book about the crisis of masculinity in this country, which is just completely fucking backwards. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are both television personalities. So they have the ability to communicate in a way that is, I think, threatening. Where they could potentially be the people that also speak Trump speak. I haven't seen any evidence that is happening yet, but it is a concern. Larry McBarry says, how much do you love Nancy Pelosi? How much do you love Chuck Schumer? They're fine. I don't hate them, but I also don't love them. They've done a lot of things that I think are really great, and they've done a lot of things that I think are really bad. Like, I think Chuck Schumer is kind of, he's kind of a weenie where we need somebody doing things that are more aggressive right now. When he went on the news and he's talking about all the shit that Trump was doing, and he's like, and we wrote a very strongly worded letter. And I was like, get the fuck out of here, man. I think AOC should take your seats. Nancy Pelosi went out there and said she didn't think it was a problem that people in government were doing insider trading. I was like, Nancy, are you fucking kidding me, man? And I'm appreciating these people for being trailblazers for the work that they've done. Nancy Pelosi got the ACA across the finish line. She was a trailblazer for women in politics. But, it's time, guys. It's time to retire. GTFO. Arrow Abraham, good to see you again. Thoughts on increasing the barriers of entry for foreign direct investments or limiting FDI? Yeah, I'm not as strong on these policy specifics, but I do think that it is an issue. I think it is an issue that Russian oligarchs are able to launder their money by buying billion-dollar properties here in America. Naked Eddie Comedy says, hi, I do comedy and comedy. Question, when will the Trump reign come to an end? when he passes away. Osher says, can Democrats stop pretending like the ACA was a great deal when we still have terrible health care? I mean, it was a great deal. You know, it's not perfect. It wasn't universal health care. It didn't even have a single payer option because of fucking that one independent senator whose name I can't remember right now. Lieberman. Lieberman is the guy who killed the public option in the Affordable Care Act. But it brought down health insurance premiums and it increased access for everyday Americans. It made it so that insurance companies couldn't discriminate against people for having pre-existing conditions. That saved lives. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. So yeah, perfect? No. But good? Potentially great? Absolutely. Larry McBarry says, what are your thoughts on Ahmed al-Sharaa and Syria? Is that the guy who is currently in charge of Syria after they booted Assad? Larry McBarry? I don't remember what the dude's name is, but if that's the guy I'm thinking of, I do have an opinion on him. Ruff says, what have Biden, Schumer, or Pelosi ever accomplished? Oh my God, so many things. Are you fucking kidding me, man? Like literally, Pelosi got the Affordable Care Act over the finish line. You know, I don't have anything for Schumer off the top of my head, but I know that he's got some stuff. All right. If you come back tomorrow, I'll give you Schumer stuff. And Biden, the last 4 years, one of the most effective progressive administrations in history, the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history, capping the cost of insulin, capping the cost of asthma inhalers, walking the picket line with the unions, an NLRB that was actually siding with workers ahead of the Federal Trade Commission that was going after monopolies. Like, are you fucking kidding me, man? The Biden list of accomplishment is fucking, it's a mile fucking long. It's almost as long as my dick. Alrighty, so yeah, my thoughts on Ahmed al-Sharaa. You know, in regime change that happens within countries tends to be more stable and, you know, more sustaining than when America goes in and does regime change. So we should be encouraging, what's the dude's name? Ahmed to live up to his promise of being a fair and inclusive new leader of Syria. And, you know, is it concerning that he used to be part of a terrorist organization? Absolutely. But he's claiming that that is over and that now it is a new day for Syria. It is a new Syrian government that is against the Assad regime. And so they're going to be not a religious fundamentalist government and shit like that. And so I agree that we should be lifting sanctions for that country to allow them to become this ideal Syria that Ahmed is talking about. And if he ends up not being the person that he says he's going to be, then we can put the sanctions back on. Easy peasy. Wellesley says, do you realize that if there's a $30 minimum wage, then businesses will hire less people? That is billionaire propaganda, Wesley. Billionaires often flood the airwaves with lies about how it's going to hurt to try to help the working class. They're going to say, we're going to go bankrupt. We're not going to be able to hire as many people. All these regulations are going to kill us. And guess what? It has never happened. It doesn't happen. There's no history of it happening, but they just always are yelling and saying, oh my God, we're just barely surviving while they're flying around on fucking private jets, eating caviar and lobster 3 meals a day. And they got 10 fucking homes and 10 fucking mega yachts. You know, they're lying. They're lying to us. Alrighty. Alex says Trump dropped more than 180 missiles on Syria alone. Is that real? I don't remember that happening. That happened during his first term? I forget. Larry McBarry says, but then they'll just move the businesses to states with lower minimum wage. Potentially, but also then there are holes in that place for new industries. You know how many people would fucking love it if Walmart just left and they could be the new Walmarts? Like, they would fucking go crazy over that. And again, they always threaten that, and then they just never do. You know, they have a long history of this, of threatening to leave and then not leaving, of threatening that they're not going to be able to hire as many people and then not being able to hire as many people. Because here's the thing about the economy is when you do trickle-down economics, when you give all the money and the power to the top 1%, then the rest of us don't have any money to buy things. And that dries up the economy. It is like a manufactured drought that happens economically. But $30 minimum wage means that workers will have more money to spend. This is what Henry Ford's genius was in paying his workers enough where they could actually afford to buy the cars that they were making. That is how you build an economy from the bottom up. So all these companies that say that they're going to leave if there's $30 minimum wage, they're not going to fucking leave when all of a sudden they have a new customer base that is loaded with fucking cash to support their fucking businesses. You know, it is a way of generating a hot economy by paying people more so that they can actually spend money to get the things that they need, you know, as opposed to when you cut taxes for billionaires and they just put their money on a fucking island somewhere, a tax haven, where they can fucking sit on it like fucking Smaug the dragon, you know? Oof. Alex says, remember when Trump refused to receive 4 dead American soldiers because he was busy golfing? I do remember that. 11 Thread 4 says, why stop at $30? Why not 50? I'm fine with that. I know what you're doing, but I'm also fine with that. Let's see here. Errol Abraham says, the capping for rich people is caping for rich people is crazy. How do we get average people to stop protecting rich people? We do the work, Eru. It's the same thing I say every live stream, man. We do the work. Have you talked to the people in your life, in person, not on the internet, about this shit, Eru? You know, do the work, my man. MindNox says, is there anything you agree with that Trump has done? So MindNox, before I answer this question, I just want to talk about the question specifically, because there is this idea that in order to be a reputable source of political information, that you have to fairly judge both sides of the political spectrum. You have to talk about the good things and the bad things of the Democratic Party and the good things and the bad things of the Republican Party. But here's the thing. Sometimes one party is way, way worse. And there's no value in talking about the tiny amount of silver lining that is covering the giant pile of shit that is their agenda, that is their platform. You know, if you got 2 candidates and one of them is John Wayne Gacy, do I really need to find something nice to say about John Wayne Gacy? Like, really, guy? So yeah, you know, like, do I think that the Trump Treasury Department is making the right move by eliminating the penny? Sure, that seems cool. I'm not mad at that. Am I happy that he signed that fucking criminal justice reform during his first term that he didn't fucking do anything about? He just signed it because Kim Kardashian told him to? Sure. But there is a mountain of fucking shit that he and his people are doing that is undoing all of the potential goods that those things are accomplishing. You know, it is fucking half a step forward and 1,000 steps backward with him and every other elected Republican politician, you know? So yeah, I take your question, but also, like, let's think about this. Let's think about how much worse the Republican Party is than the Democratic Party. All right, Alex says, remember when Trump shorted the market and made billions? I don't remember that. Larry McBarry says, why don't we all just move to Denmark? The problem with that is that it probably doesn't have enough resources to accommodate us all. Not everybody has the resources available to move to a different country. Not everybody has the resources available to become citizens of other countries. And also, a lot of these democratic socialist states that we all love their policies, they all are kind of homogenous. And so maybe they're not open to having people of color or Jewish people just flooding their borders, you know? Alrighty. Larry McBarry says, you just said you agree with him taking sanctions off Syria. I do, Larry McBarry, but he didn't take the sanctions off because he believes in what Ahmed was doing. He took the sanctions off because Ahmed told him that he could build a fucking Trump Tower there in Syria. So it was all fucking corruption, you know? NO says, why are people not open towards a new system that isn't capitalism when it hasn't been working? Propaganda, my man, because billionaires have been flooding the media and social media with pro-capitalism, pro-rich people propaganda for an entire fucking generation. It is insidious. It is effective. It has been going on for a very long time. Read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer, because the way that I'm describing it, you might be like, that sounds a little hyperbolic, Jarrett. It's worse than even I am describing it. Rich people have been trying to affect American culture to make it so that capitalism is great and trickle-down economics is great, have for a very long time. And government bad, we should dismantle the government. That is all just rich person propaganda. The entire Libertarian Party is astroturfed billionaire propaganda. Let's see here. C, Israel is not AI generated. Azul says, and let America fall. We must fight for our country. I don't know what you mean by that, Azul. Asher says, thoughts on limiting ownership of homes to 3 total? That sounds fine to me. Let's see here. What's the name of the BPPK? I don't know what that is. Thank you for being here, everybody. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you are further to the left than me or further to the right than me. I do not care if you voted or didn't vote. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to debate you. I'm just here to answer all of your questions in good faith. Sometimes I get a little spicy in the comments and people are spicy at me, but I try my best to just, answer your questions in good faith. Ruff says, you didn't really name any accomplishment of Biden. It's just nonsensical blather. That is blatantly untrue. I named like a dozen things that he did. Larry McBarry says, building an economy from the bottom up can never happen. At this point, it's all just words. That is unreal. That is not a real thing, Larry McBarry. Are you still here, Larry McBarry? That is a wild thing that you just said, because it was literally getting started under the Biden administration. There are other nations that have done it. It is extremely possible. It's a very possible thing to do. To just say that it's never going to happen is fucking wild, like billionaire funded cynicism, And says, what do you think are some effective ways to beat capitalist propaganda? Talking to people in real life, my guy. NO. Are you no? Are you number? What's the NO for? You got to talk to people in real life. Go to my Discord. I got a thread posted that's called The Work, and it's just what people like you and me can do to try to fight billionaire propaganda. Those who say it's not possible is one of the capitalist propaganda. Completely agree with that. NO. AP3887 says, when is the last time a politician did something positive that impacted you directly? I mean, it's difficult to answer that question because the Biden administration passed the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. That will have an effect on me eventually, but did it change climate change today? Not really. That stuff takes a while to sort of like kick in. But the Biden administration also curbed inflation. They brought it back down from 9% to 2.4%. That inflation was started because of the Trump administration. The Biden administration fixed it. And so, prices not continue to go up at 9% every month. That 100% helps me. Absolutely. Let's see here. What have Republicans done? A lot of really bad things as a rule. But if you ask me very specifically, then I might be able to answer you very specifically. Osher says, are you a fan of using ranked choice voting to replace the Electoral College? I mean, I think we should get rid of the Electoral College regardless. But I also liked ranked choice voting as well. Jeff Hawley says, you seem pretty biased, LMAO. Do I seem biased, or are the facts biased? Do you know what I mean? People that think that I'm biased think that the facts that facts aren't facts. Do you know what I mean? Like I could probably think of a more eloquent way of saying that. Let's see here. Lisa Salas, hello, my friend, as well. Johnny Five says the Supreme Court basically gave Trump the keys to a third term and beyond. We are done. Johnny Five, we are not done. Do not be cynical. Do not give up hope. That is what Republicans and Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the billionaire class want you to think. They want you to think that it's fucking game over. They want you to think that resistance is futile. So do not give them that. Do not give them your hopelessness. That is a gift to the billionaire class, and they have fucking enough. They do not need the gift of you giving up. They want to tell you to give up. And what you should say back to them is fucking lick my butthole, you weird ass fucking dorks. I'm not giving up. Alrighty. Peter says, we done. No. Also no. Johnny Five says, yes, we are. The Supreme Court made it so to challenge an executive order, you can't sue as a group. Johnny Five, I swear to fucking God, if you do not ask a question, I'm going to boot you, because I do not allow people to just spread cynical doomerism bullshit that convinces people to just throw their hands up in the air like they just don't care and let the fucking billionaires continue to trample on us. I'm here advocating for people to do the work, Johnny Five. So be alive, Johnny Five. Alrighty. Logical Argument says, can we get a high five for Trump causing a ceasefire? What an amazing president. Are you being sarcastic, Logical Argument? NO says, it's us versus the 1% billionaire parasites. Don't lose hope. Completely agree. Dan Blackroyd. Yeah, fucking exactly, my man. Tyro Pillar says, wear your shirt in public. I got looks like it was a MAGA hat. That sounds like a bad thing, my man. Did anybody give you high fives for wearing that shirt? Ethan Walschlager, good to see you again. I was just talking about you. Let's see here. Johnny Five says, so he can make an executive order and no one can stop him. He ties it up a court and stays president. Johnny Five, congratulations. I warned you. I said ask a question, but again, all you're doing is spreading bullshit, cynical propaganda. You're out of here, my man. Alrighty. I'm so glad I blocked you because literally the next thing you said was just facts. Lucas says Jordan or LeBron. This is very important. That's not a question about politics. Let's see here. All right. Welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So post your question in the chat, and I promise to give you a good faith answer, regardless of if you have the same politics as me or different politics as me. CA Alexa, CA Alex CA says, is a third party viable? Not until we have ranked choice voting. Until we have ranked choice voting, third parties can only serve to be spoiler candidates. And I should also mention that Republicans are trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. So if you want third parties, if you want ranked choice voting, you have to vote for Democrats. Sorry, everybody. Ethan Walschlager says, what's ranked choice voting? So right now in America, we have one or the other voting, you know? So if you like Donald Trump, but you don't like Kamala Harris, you vote for Donald Trump against, and it's also a vote against Kamala Harris. But maybe you want to vote for RFK Jr. instead, but you're worried that your vote for RFK Jr. would take away a vote that Trump needs to beat Kamala Harris. So people end up having this like game theory with their vote. In order to not split the vote between two candidates that are very similar, you have to have ranked choice voting, which is basically like, this is my number one choice, this is my number two choice, this is my number three choice. And candidates get a different number of points based on where they are in the ranking, and whoever gets a certain number of points basically wins. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but that's the general idea. It is a new way of voting so that spoiler candidates aren't a thing. Does that make sense, Ethan? Did I explain that okay? Dude McFitty says ranked choice does little to I have a better system. Can I come up? No, dude, I don't typically have people on. But tell me what you think the better idea is. Taylor says Trump. Is that what's your question, Taylor? Globetrotter says that's interesting. Tank choice voting. That wasn't intentional, Globetrotter. That's too bad. That was funny. Taylor Tomscat says, do you think protests need to be organized with one main point or more chaotic and real? I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both. You know, like protests are everybody's invited. Protests are come, and the more feet that we have on the street, the more powerful our message becomes. And so it doesn't do anybody any good to have like purity tests for who's allowed to come to your protest, checking to make sure your sign is on brand and stuff like that. But it's also important if you are the organizer of said protests to be like, hey, we're not setting cars on fire here. We are not burning down buildings. We are not punching people in the face. We are just here to get our message out. And it's also important to remember that protest is one thing of a lot of different things that we have to do in order to affect political change as the masses. Ethan Walschlager says, do you think Trump is truly Christian or a lukewarm Christian? Trump's only religion is Trump. That is the only thing that he cares about is him making money, him getting power, him staying out of jail, him being able to sexually harass and abuse women without any kind of repercussions whatsoever. That is the only thing. You know, he prays at the altar of Trump and him getting money. Torta Inspector says, did the bill pass? I haven't seen any up-to-the-minute updates on that. Strider says, what's your opinion on Trump relocating Gaza civilians to Jordan and sending America to be there? It's ethnic cleansing. It is monstrous to remove people from where they are living and take over that area so he can put a fucking Trump hotel there or some shit. Like, yeah, that's ethnic cleansing. That is ethnic cleansing. And he's openly advocating for it. And Kamala would have been better, obviously. Philimo says, why is Trump calling Mamdani a communist? Trump believes that calling somebody a communist is enough to turn people off because the word communist and socialist have suffered from generations of a smear campaign. And so, yeah, it is a shorthand for Trump to say that person bad and potentially, you know, hinting to his base that he would be cool with them doing political violence on him. Arrow Abraham says, how effective are peaceful protests? Any examples in recent history that include hits to economics? If you want to learn more about that, Arrow Abraham, you should check out an American political scientist and professor at Harvard Kennedy School called Erica Chenoweth. Her name is Erica Chenoweth. She is an American political scientist. She's been on a bunch of podcasts recently talking about the power of peaceful protests and other things that need to happen in order for that to lead to political change. Let's see here. Ladybug Trading says, wait till they start sending black prisoners to Africa because that's where this is going. I do not think that that is inaccurate at all. Ladybug. Not so Slim Shady says, do you think the U.S. should decrease defense spending? Yeah, probably. That sounds good to me. Bam 2.7 says, did you get bullied in high school? No, but I fucked your mom when I was in high school. Justin Palmer says, wow, you are so misinformed, it's unreal. Ask a question, Justin Palmer, or I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you think, that I'm a jerk or whatever, but ask a question, be part of the conversation. Bam says, you never had a girlfriend, wife? Again, just your mom. Globetrotter says, do you think the president should be elected by popular vote? Yes, 100%. Alrighty. Alex CA said, should the U.S. continue to prop up Israel? No, they should not. Tyro Pillar says, I felt like they were afraid because of the political climate and all the BS information that's out there. I mean, it is weird out there, Tyro, so I would just say be careful, my man. All right, welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. You can ask me anything that you like, and I will answer in good faith, so long as you are asking in good faith. Ethan Walschlager says, why do you think it would be a good idea to decrease defense spending? So, on the merits, it is good to have defense spending. We need to, part of the job of the American government is protecting its citizens from all threats, foreign and domestic. And in order to do that effectively, we need to be on the cutting edge of military technology, computer hacking shit. You know how that works. Problem is that the Pentagon's budget has been ballooning for generations, and they have never passed an audit. They are bad at keeping track of where they are spending their money. I think that the military believes they have a blank check, and they are abusing it. And so I think reining in the military's budget would be a step in the right direction. I think we can continue to do our research and development, but make them pass an audit, just like every other branch of government. Mary Pip says, can you summarize how the Big Beautiful Bill transfers money from the poor to the wealthy? Sure, Mary Pip. There are a few mechanisms in the bill that do this, but the main one is this. The Big Beautiful Bill cuts taxes for the billionaire class, which increases the debt and the deficit. And in order to try to counteract that, they are cutting funding for government programs that the rest of us use. So Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, all that stuff is going to be cut massively, which means that American citizens are going to have to pay more of their money that they don't have for healthcare, for food, for school, water filters, because there's not going to be a government agency in charge of making sure that your water doesn't have fucking arsenic in it and shit like that. So the billionaires are getting this massive tax cuts at the expense of government programs that help the rest of us. That's the short version. All right, have fun fishing, Ethan. Great to see you again. Thank you for being here. Not so Slim Shady says, have you seen the Kill the IDF stuff at Glastonbury Festival in the UK? I have not. Brandon Dalton said, did you see Musk being the first casualty of Trump's inner circle? Who's next? I don't believe that anybody really leaves Trump's inner circle. Maybe they're not like number one on the call sheet anymore, but Elon knows what side of his bread is buttered on. So he is going to continue to do the work of extracting favors from Trump so that his companies can get government contracts and he can skirt regulations and shit like that. It is still in his best interest to be part of that circle. And as far as like who's next, I don't know. Tom Tillis said that he's not running for re-election because he wants to speak out against the Big Beautiful Bill. So yeah, Trump's probably going to put his ire on there. What did Ethan say about I could see it both ways? Why do you think? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get it. Azul says the president, Steve Miller. Yeah, Steve Miller's not going nowhere. He is the shadow president. Trump would not be able to run his administration without him. Sociology doctor says statisticians have identified massive anomalies, yet it is being censored. When will it come out? Are you talking about the voting irregularities, sociology doctor? Because there is the court case right now in New York. I think it is Rockland County, and I find it to be relatively persuasive. But we shouldn't jump to conclusions. We should wait to see what happens with the trial, with what happens with discovery. But yeah, it looks fucking weird, man. It looks fucking weird. K2 says, why does populism seem as a bad thing? Feels ironic since people always call for democracy. So the problem with populism is not that it is advocating for policies that are popular with the base or that would help the majority of the people. The problem is the way that populism can be weaponized in order to win elections. So you got Donald Trump saying, quote unquote, populist things like, I'm going to close loopholes for Wall Street, or I'm going to give you a healthcare bill that is so great, and we're all going to be so rich, and we're going to get rid of all the bad people, and it's only going to be good people in here. And, all of that is lies. It's all completely fucking fake, So, being a populist, appealing to the masses isn't inherently bad. It's just that it is really easy to take advantage of your voting base that way. Brody26 says, do you know? Do I know what? Yep, I know, but there's so much more in all the swings. Yeah, again, but it's the same sociology doctor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the same company that potentially uploaded software to the vote counting machines in Rockland County as other swing states, right? So that case is going to affect what happens in, the swing state totals as well. Additionally, Trump has already been sworn in, so it's not going to change the outcome of the election. I mean, it'll be very smart for figuring out if that's a thing so that we can make sure that elections are still fair going forward. But we know that there isn't full electoral capture by the Republican Party because Democrats have been winning special elections left and right ever since Trump won in November. There was a Wisconsin Supreme Court seat that went to the Democrats, a bunch of state house and Senate seats and special elections that have happened in a bunch of red counties and shit like that. So yeah, it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth looking into and making sure and holding people legally accountable. And then we can know that Trump wasn't legally elected president, even though he's not going to be not president because of that. Asher says, thoughts on David Hogg and removing incumbent Democrats. David is, he's a little messy. And I don't hate it. I do like people fighting for progressivism and progressive candidates aggressively. I like aggressive progressives. Is that a bad look? Maybe. Probably. I don't know. People love looking at the Democratic Party and going, Dems in disarray. Look at them. They all hate each other. This party's falling apart. Oh, the humanity kind of a shit kind of a thing, Some of the rhetoric around what happened with David Hogg is a little hyperbolic, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. But yeah, it was like a Real Housewives situation where I was kind of on his side, but also he maybe could have handled that thing more tactfully. Wait. Sociology doctor says no way he could stay as sitting president. I disagree with that. Sociology doctor, think about who would enforce that. Would the Republican-controlled Congress enforce that? Would the Republican-controlled Supreme Court enforce that? Going by the letter of the law, he was sworn in as president, not because the vote was fair, but because that's what the electors in all of the various states decided to do. Now, why did they decide that? Obviously, because that's what they thought their state voted for. But that's not how the electoral system works in this country. The person who gets to be president is the guy that the electors vote for, and then those electors are confirmed by the vice president, and then they are sworn in, and then they're president, Additionally, this Supreme Court has been very amenable to making up legal doctrine just to support their Republican policy and the Republican Party. So yeah, I don't see it as a viable solution. Let's see here. Brody says, "Is Russia going to attack NATO?" I don't know, but I think if Putin is able to fully capture Ukraine, he's not going to stop. But will he be able to fully capture Ukraine? That I don't know. I don't think that he's going to be able to do more than one war at once, because just this one war with Ukraine that he started is already decimating his military and his economy. Therion House says, thoughts on balkanization in the U.S. I got to be honest with you, Therion House. I'm only 30% sure I know what that word balkanization means. Can you expand on that? Brody says, so not anytime soon. That's my prediction. Yeah, not anytime soon. Flavius Belarosius says, thoughts on how universal free healthcare could be implemented in the U.S. We would just have to vote for the politicians who would be willing to do it. And let's be clear about this. Universal health care would be cheaper. It would have better health care outcomes here in America, but it would still be hard to do. If every politician that was in office right now was pro universal health care, just the very act of switching a massive health insurance industry that is intimately connected to healthcare with hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs potentially lost in the process, or switched over to government jobs instead of private industry jobs, paperwork having to be reformatted, and it would be a massive overtaking, and we should 100% do it. We should do it. It would be hard, and it will take a lot of people doing a lot of work to do it, but we 100% should do it. Ladybug Trading says Amendment 24, removal due to mental defect. He would have to have his cabinet, I think, vote on that, Ladybug, and his cabinet is in his pocket. They're happy that they get to be shadow presidents of America. So Stephen Miller is not going to be down with that. JD Vance is not going to be down with that. Kristi Noem's not going to be down with that. Diego Vargas says, have you seen the Tucker podcast with Marjorie Taylor Greene? I try to avoid that dude and that woman as much as humanly possible, Alrighty, what else we got here? Let's see here. CA Alex CA says, thoughts on democratic socialism? I like it. Diego Vargas says, why do we increase the defense budget every year when we are not even at war? For two reasons. The Republican Party is in bed with the military-industrial complex. When their buddies at Raytheon make a ton of money on government contracts, then it helps them out, because then they get no-show jobs, and they get lobbying jobs, and they get help in getting reelected. The Democratic Party is a little bit different. Democrats have been smeared as this weenie party that doesn't give a shit about national security, that is in love with terrorists. We just want to hug and kiss everybody so that there's no more wars. And so in an attempt to fight that stigmatization, Democrats have been more open toward embracing the military, both in financing and also in encouraging military operation. It's the reason why there was this Trump the dove, Hillary the hawk narrative before the 2016 election, which was that Hillary was doing the work of making her seem, like a big, tough national security person, in order to counteract that smear campaign. If the Democratic Party ever decreased the military's budget by one penny, there would be an explosion of propaganda and smear campaigns about how we're the weenie parties who are leaving us less secure. And if one Marine got a splinter, they would say this is because Democrats have slashed the budget of the military. And it's unfair. It is unjust bullshit, because the Republican Party was fully in charge of the government when 9/11 happened. So they are the party that was in charge during the greatest national security failure in our nation's history, and yet we still view them as the party of being stronger on national security. Explain that to me. Explain how that is not just billionaire-funded propaganda propping up a Republican Party that has done nothing for this country for fucking decades, for an entire generation. No says, I saw on a SCOTUS podcast that last year only 8% of cases were along party lines. Thoughts on that? Um, Interesting. I would need to double check that, no Dodo, but I do have a theory. I don't know if it accounts for that whole that massive discrepancy, but I do have a theory about that. I think that because the conservative judges on the Supreme Court have a supermajority, that they take turns being the normal, not crazy one. So sometimes it'll be Gorsuch, sometimes it'll be Barrett, sometimes it'll be Kavanaugh. They all get to trade taking places being the not crazy one on the Supreme Court sometimes. And then the conservatives get to go, look, we're not just fully in the bag for the Republican Party. Look, not all of our decisions are just straight along party lines. Isn't that interesting? The outcomes are the same. The Republicans keep on getting what they fucking want. Trump keeps on getting what he fucking wants. That's my theory. I don't have a ton of substantive, evidence to back that up, but it seems to track for me. Alrighty. Okay. Ashamed American says, how do you feel about JD Vance? He's a liar. He's an opportunist. He's a piece of shit. Mello says, I'm convinced the damage done will take decades to undo. It will, Mello, but the more people that do the work, the less time it will take. So do the work. Let's all do the work, Mello. Diego Vargas says, have you lost any family or friend members to the MAGA cult? Trump has already destroyed us. Not really. I mean, there were people that I was on the skids with for a while anyways, and so it was like the final nail in the coffin, Azul says, how is it okay that administration threatening Congress? Because there is nobody in power right now who is going to challenge Trump. Like if the Democrats had Congress, or if there was a liberal majority on the Supreme Court, then we would actually have some mechanism to stop Trump from doing all of the unethical, illegal, dangerous, corrupt shit that he is currently doing. But Republicans are fucking asleep on the wheel, or they're scared of him, or they're happy with what he's doing. Alrighty, let's get back into some of these questions. Sonar Bat Production says, why did Doge not dig into gouging for ordering parts in the military? Should have been low-hanging fruit. Because Doge did not really give a shit about cutting government spending. They were just trying to shut down programs that were investigating Elon's companies. They were trying to shut down programs that help the poor and that hurt the rich, because Elon Musk is a billionaire and he wanted to get rid of things like the Consumer Financial Protection Board so that he could scam people more easily. Let's see here. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Anna says, can I ask you a question? You can. Just put it in the chat. I really appreciate y'all being here. I really appreciate all the gifts and the likes and the shares and the subscribes and everything. Your care, your support is what makes this live stream possible. Your questions are what make this live stream possible. And I hope that you all hear my gospel about doing the work, because it is only through all of us doing the work in person, in real life, that we're going to be able to stop this illegal and unconstitutional bullshit. I dream of a world where Republican politicians are judged half as harshly as Democratic politicians, where Republican politicians suffer electoral consequences for the fucking shit that they have been putting us through for decades. So help me make that dream a reality by doing the work, by getting out there and convincing people to vote and vote against the Republican Party. Vote for better over worse. And as flawed as it is, as fucking lame, fucking institutionalist as it might sound, the Democratic Party is better. So let's all vote for the Democratic Party so we can have better over fucking worse. And we can fucking teach the Republican Party a lesson for all their extremism and all their fucking bullshit, guys. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can catch me on TikTok, on YouTube, and on Twitch. My website, jaredbernstein.com, is where you can find my streaming schedule, my live stand-up comedy schedule, my store, if you want to buy cool shit, if you want to join my Patreon. If I get, what did I say? If I get 1,000 new Patreon subscribers, then I'll write a new How a Bill Becomes a Long song, i.e., like School of Rock shit. And you can send gifts and stuff like that, but you don't have to. I know that we're all suffering through a cost of living crisis that is only getting worse so long as Republicans are in charge of the government. And yeah, if there was any questions that I was not able to get to or that you think of later, my DMs are open, y'all, and you can email me through my websites. I respond to emails because this is the work that I do. Like I want to convince people. I want to get more people on board with the project of unelecting every fucking Republican from president to dog catcher. So let's fucking do it, guys. Let's fucking do it. Alrighty. Thank you for being here, everybody. I'm going to go eat lunch. Have an excellent rest of your Monday. I will see you here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Be good to everybody. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you tomorrow, everybody. Bye-bye. 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 Goodbye.